Hello and welcome to the Life After Diets podcast. I'm Sarah Dosanjh, psychotherapist and author of the book I Can't Stop Eating.
And I'm Stefanie Michele, binge recovery health coach. If you feel out of control around food, we get it because we've been there.
Thank you for joining our conversations about how to make peace with food and feel more comfortable in our bodies.
Now on to this week's episode.
Hey Steph, what are we talking about
today? Hey. So we're talking about eating and screens, like eating screens.
Eating screens. Don't do it.
And I think there's differences between screens, and I suppose we'll get into that, but eating while watching something, particularly on a screen, like television.
Or reading something on a screen, like scrolling.
Correct. Basically your phone or your television.
Or your laptop. Or your desktop.
Yeah, that's it. Do you do it?
Yes, I do. Again, I feel like I've talked about this example to death. But I did, as talked about before, I did do 2 months of not eating in front of a screen.
No. Say that differently. There's people who have just joined in on this podcast who haven't heard all those episodes. Yeah. What did you do? Own it, Sarah.
Okay. I was very much aware that there had become this really inextricable link between watching television and eating. And I don't just mean eating meals. And it got to the point where I would find it hard to sit down and watch television and not eat something. And vice versa. I found it almost impossible to eat something and not be watching television or on some screen of some kind. And so for a couple of months, I set myself a boundary. This was how I phrased it at the time. And I appreciate that you can pick apart the language here, is that I would only eat sweet foods or foods that I saw as binge foods at the table without any distractions. So I could still eat a meal in front of the TV if I wanted to. That wasn't a problem. But I did that. And it was really for me about trying to break this connection between the two of them. I found it a really fruitful exercise. And I know only recently, actually, someone's commented on one of my videos and said, don't mean to be picky, but isn't that another rule saying that you're going to sit at the table and eat the food like that? And when I had talked about it, I think because it was so useful for me at the time, I talked about it and I was like, maybe this could help a lot of people. Like, why don't you guys try this? But when you're taking it as advice from another person in that way, it can very quickly feel rule-based. And I talked about this, I think, when we were talking about Inner Rebel, that for me, this was something that came up from within me. I didn't hear it somewhere. I didn't read it somewhere. It was just something that came into my mind. And there was a real sense of wisdom in it for me. And it didn't feel like this confinement thing. Because anytime I tried to set myself a rule, I couldn't anyway. I just broke all the rules. So if it had felt like a rule to me, I wouldn't have been able to have done it because there's no way I could have stuck to a rule for a couple of months. And it was really useful for me. And so now I will still eat in front of a screen and I will sometimes not eat in front of a screen. And I try to have a combination of both. And I can tell because it feels different. It feels different when I'm eating in front of a screen because I don't want to, this isn't sounding, because I was going to say like I don't want to check out. But it's more than that. I can tell when it feels a little bit compulsive compared to when it's just, oh, I just want to watch this thing and eat my food.
What's the difference?
It's like it feels really itchy not to. So it becomes less about, oh, I fancy watching this thing while I eat, and more about, oh, I have to put something on when I eat.
Yeah, it's like the priority is in one case it's eating and in the other case it's TV. Never mind.
Say more.
Like I'm eating and I'd like to watch this thing versus I'm watching this thing and so I have to eat. You know what I mean? Like which one's coming first?
Yes. Or I'm eating so I have to watch TV. Both of those.
Yeah.
And that's where they kind of fed off one another. And it was really uncomfortable. It was a really uncomfortable
I was going to say, what was that hard to do?
Yes.
And were you ever tempted to like just this once kind of thing to not do it, to break the internal wisdom / rule?
I didn't really spend time negotiating with myself about it. It was more, it felt like the attitude, it was an exploratory thing. So when it felt uncomfortable, there was no point where my mind got really stressed about that. It was like the curious part of my mind was quite awake and could just be like, oh God, like this feels really uncomfortable. Oh, I can feel this tension. I can feel this no. And there was this, I was just in this very, I feel like I felt quite clear-minded at that time and was just able to observe this experience. So I don't remember any time where it felt really stressful, but it did feel uncomfortable. And I can remember feeling like I wanted to just stamp my feet, feeling like I just wanted to go like, and just listening to that.
That's so wise. So mature of you. I think there was a period of time where I would eat it was right after I got married, and we would eat and watch TV at the same time on the couch. Like that's where we had dinner. And it became a habit, and but it also became like this coveted time. And then we had my daughter, and she would go to bed, and then it was our time. Like it became even more coveted, I think, after we had her. And it was ritualistic. I think it was my husband, actually. He was like, why don't we try to have dinner at the table and then watch TV? And I remember it being like, don't you ever say that again. Like that's horrible.
I will leave you.
I would have. It was like that sounds awful to me, because both would have, I felt like both the eating and the television experience would have been worse. Like I don't want to eat without watching TV, and I also don't want to watch TV without eating. There's something about the combined effect that is part of what I count on and what I need. And without one or the other, it's boring and it's whoa. And I'm sitting here actually in my mind thinking, how the heck did I ever break that? How did I get out of that? I don't know.
That was going to be my question.
He's outside. I might go ask him. Like, I don't remember how that stopped. We don't do this anymore.
Go and ask him, Stef.
Hey, Michael. Come here a second. I have to ask you something. He doesn't want to be on the podcast. Okay, then I'll ask you through the door. Okay. Remember when we used to watch TV and eat dinner on the couch for years and years? How did we stop? No, because we used to do it when Julie was little. We would wait for her to go to bed. Oh, yes, you're right. I got it now. I remember.
When they started eating at the table with you?
Yes. Yes. Because when it was just Julie, she, like it was easy. We still weren't eating together, and they were little. But when they got to an age, and it was by the time I had my second, because at that time Julie was getting older, and it was more like, okay, I think it's time to have sit down dinners as a family. Like that was an expectation I had, and fine. We started eating earlier at like 5:30. And we started eating so early because I couldn't wait, because I would be so hungry by that time of day that I needed to eat. I wanted to eat at like 4:30 because I was hungry and I was getting bingey at that time. So 5:00 was the dinner time that we came up with, and we would sit down, and that's how we broke that habit. And then the more kids we had, that time of night became overrun by bedtime. So even now, that whole TV evening experience is pushed so much later that we're in bed by the time we're watching TV at this point. So it was life circumstance, and it worked in my favor at that, for that reason. But it's interesting because now, like on a weekend or something, where every now and then after dinner, I'll just sit, rarely, but I'll sit on the couch and watch TV and just be like, oh, but I don't feel any need to eat. Like that has just sort of disappeared from it, not on purpose. It just, because I've broken the habit for so long, I think it just hasn't, and I recovered in the meantime. That hasn't come up. Although I will enjoy like a Friday night, enjoying dessert or something, watching TV. I still enjoy the experience of that, but it's not compulsive.
So it was the same result. It was about breaking this link that had just become, when it's so established and this is what's happening day after day, to then not do that, or to try and separate those two things without something else to take the place, is uncomfortable. But I think what you're advising people to do is just have kids and everything will be fine.
That's my advice.
Yeah. That'll fix you.
It helps many things and hurts many things.
And if your relationship is in trouble, definitely have kids.
Definitely have kids.
That'll help.
Yeah, but it was replaced, and that's the thing. I think it's very difficult to break any habit or compulsion without a replacement. And I think it has to be a natural replacement, right? So there was something else that came and filled the gap. I tried that a lot of times to fill the gap in other ways on purpose, and it never worked. It had to be something organic. So I'm not going to be of much help here because it wasn't a strategy. It was just circumstance.
You have lunch on your own?
Yes.
What do you do?
And I screen it up.
Oh.
I cannot eat lunch like just willy-nilly, just sitting there doing nothing. So it's not a TV issue anymore for me at all. I rarely watch TV except at night to go to bed. At bed. But I am on my phone a lot and I'm on my computer a lot, my laptop, and I work through lunch. So, or I do Wordle or something, like I'll emails, things like that. I've always been that way. With breakfast too, I used to be that way, but before I had kids, I was always on my email. But I enjoy that so much. And it is not, as we've talked about before, I don't escape in food. I'm very aware. And I've had that idea of eating without distractions as an expectation. But I truly feel like 90% of the time, I can stay very present with my food. I can absolutely be paying attention to my food as I'm paying attention to something else. And I find the two very complementary. Again, I think TV would be different, but something where I'm actively using my brain here and then also eating, to me, this works. And I think it's the way my brain might work, but I don't think it's not a deal breaker for me. And I enjoy it. And I enjoy the food more when I'm doing that than I do if I were to just sit there. I think I enjoy it more that way. At least
how do you know?
Equivalently.
How do you know?
Because I also have done it without, like I have eaten without distractions before. My mind just finds something else to do. Like I just need something else to do. It's very difficult to be, unless I'm completely calm, then fine. But I'm so rarely completely calm. You know what I mean? That to have again, it's this expectation of self. Like, sure, in some kind of perfect world, I would find calm and settle my system and have some lunch and prepare. This is just not realistic. And sure, if I had that option, I would take it. But since normally I'm moving about, this works for me. And maybe when I'm retired, I have dreams that when I'm retired and like older and like, empty nests, that I will have these calm, mindful meals that probably don't need a distraction. But that is not my life right now. And that's fine. I don't carry guilt about the fact that I eat lunch and scroll. Mm-hmm. It just works for me.
If you would like to come and connect with us in person, we're going to be in Dublin on Saturday, the 16th of September, 2023. We're going to be teaming up with the Intuitive Eating Hub for a workshop, followed by a social at a local Irish pub. We would love to meet you and hope you can join us.
And don't forget, you can still join our community of listeners by signing up on Patreon for access to monthly support calls, an active private Facebook group, and regular Ask Us Anything bonus calls. Links for Dublin and for the community are in the show notes.
Where do you think the line is then? And I appreciate the answer kind of going to be it varies, but how to help people figure out if there's a line where it might be a problem for them versus like for you, or it's not a problem?
I think it's more I know we have the terms like permitters and restrictors. We need terms for like checker outers and regulators. I can feel the difference between when I'm using a secondary source of stimulation to help myself regulate, and I can be more focused and more present, versus the checker outer where you're almost like waking up afterwards and you're like, where did my food go? Or I just missed that whole experience. I wasn't here really for it. I think we tend to know what if we're one or the other, or when one or the other is happening. And I would say that in that case, like in a checking out experience where you just sort of like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that I ate my lunch. That would be different than if you're like, no, I tasted that and I was with it and that was good and now I'm satisfied and I can keep moving on my day. I think there's a felt sense difference in those two things. Whereas, and you would be the checker outer, I would say, right? Like yes. That would be more, yeah.
Yes.
So why don't you answer the question?
Well, because I didn't know that was the route you were going to go down. I didn't know you were going to talk about checker outers versus regulators.
What can we call this? Yeah.
Well, you've already called it, haven't you? Yeah.
Checker
outers. I don't know. To me, kind of sounds like, oh, check this out, as opposed to necessarily check out.
Checking out. All right, then you name that one.
There's something, again, I don't like any of the words that are coming into my mind because I'm thinking of numbing, and numbers sounds a bit. There's something about going unconscious for those of us who use or have used food to go unconscious.
Escapists?
Yeah, it's more, maybe. Now I'm just thinking of Houdini and stuff. Maybe I kind of like that. Okay, escapists. You guys are all regulated.
It's like a magical element. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, you put a hierarchy, or haven't
Yeah,
you?
yeah. You guys sit in the
Ah.
corner and regulate. Whatever you need to do, and we're gonna escape to some
Oh,
magical
interesting.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the me being able to not turn to food to continue to escape. This is where we get existential. Really, for me, became about making peace with reality,
Yeah.
all the parts of it that I didn't like, because it meant staying with this. I don't tend to run anxious in the same way. So the staying with, I don't know, this is probably not going to make any sense whatsoever or even be true, but I'm going to try it out anyway. But there's an energy in anxiousness. Maybe. I don't know. I'm totally doubting myself as I say it. And it's like not having an outlet for something.
Yeah.
So there would be times, and I remember for years not being able to cry while this was I'm feeling at times like I just feel like I want to burst. I feel like I want to scream. I feel like something wants to come out, but the actual experience, physiological experience, is really deadened. It doesn't even come out as sort of anxiety. It's a very more like a suppressed, lower feeling. And it was that kind of feeling that I was running away from. There was so much judgment in it. So I wouldn't say that I never feel that feeling, because I do. I had it the other day, a couple of times recently. I'm like, I just want to scream.
Why
But it's
don't
like
you?
because it's a thought, and it's like I can't find it in my body. My body doesn't. I did once. I say once, like once upon a time, like a couple of weeks ago, week ago.
Did it help?
I don't know. I don't know that it
Okay.
did. I'm not sure.
Okay.
There wasn't that physical relief from it.
Okay. Oh, okay.
In kind of
Then
maybe,
then is that really what you wanted to do?
I don't know, right?
Did you want to like wake up?
No, I want to go to sleep. I want to go unconscious. I want to escape. Like this is like I
What
don't
if
know
you've
what
done
to
that?
do.
Well, I guess it's hard to do. What if you do that though? What if you're just like, I'm just gonna lay here?
Well, I was driving at the time, so.
I
And if
don't
there's
recommend
anywhere
that.
else, I would scream than in my car. And it was pure kind of frustration that brought it out. And I remember being like, oh, that didn't feel cathartic.
Maybe because you needed the opposite. Maybe because you really did need. I think that sometimes that escapism feeling, which I get. Remember, I lived there for like 10 years before I got anxious, right? So that was primary before, but it will still come in. And that's when I go to my bed, if possible, and be like, I'm out. I don't want to know anything. Like I'm withdrawing. I surrender. And if I can't do that, that's a horrible feeling. I find that very, very difficult to bear. But then my anxiety will come on instead. And that's what didn't used to have that. It's interesting to think about now. I think I panic when that happens. And then all of a sudden my anxiety will come on. Whereas it didn't used to. I used to just
Maybe I just need to get me some anxiety. It was difficult because so I came to London a couple of days ago, having been down in Bournemouth for a month. And one of the things I'm finding really difficult about this digital nomading is how painful it is to leave every place that I leave. And I'm just leaving so often.
Yeah.
So even when I left New York, and I was really looking forward, I wanted to be back in the UK a lot. But even when I left, there was that sadness. And in Bournemouth, coming back to London, it's this sadness, and it's like I don't know what to do with it. It won't come out anywhere, and it feels very sort of stuck. And it was just this sick, churning feeling in my body for like 2 days, I think, before I left. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. I went and bought myself a puzzle. And there was something about I needed that shutdown, exactly what I used to do with food and screens before. I needed that shutdown. And I remember thinking, right, I'm going to get a puzzle because that will be really relaxing. And it wasn't. It was compulsive.
Oh, okay.
So I had something on. I was watching reruns of Taskmaster on Netflix. Love that show. It's a British show. It's amazing. You should watch. Well, if you have time, you have children. There's a lot of series to get through. I'm listening and watching
you
that.
just went on. Go ahead.
Listening and watching that, and just almost compulsively doing this puzzle, and finding it hard to even get myself to go to bed. And it's that same like I just find another piece. I just find another piece.
Yep.
And then the day before I left, I looked at it. I'm like, I'm not going to get this puzzle finished in time. I bought this puzzle, spent all this time on it. I'm not going to get it finished.
Yeah.
So then I just went at it like a maniac. I had to find when I'm trying to work, trying to pack, trying to get all this stuff done, and trying to get this stupid puzzle complete.
You didn't have to finish it.
I did. That was the compulsive part as well. It was like it really for some reason that the significance of that puzzle in the moment of getting it done Felt big.
Did this help?
What helped?
The puzzle, even the compulsion in it. Did it help?
It gave me somewhere, I guess, to direct something.
To direct it.
So, yeah,
Right.
something was being
So
directed.
sometimes
into it.
compulsion, I feel like compulsive energy I don't judge it anymore. Like I think sometimes it's like there's a reason that's happening. And if you can direct it in a puzzle rather than like in food, I think why not?
Yeah, I'm not judging it. I'm not judging it. I'm
Okay.
just so aware of how it felt and how similar that process was.
Yeah.
And how uncomfortable it is to feel in that compulsive place. It wasn't judgment, but it was really uncomfortable, and just not knowing what to do with myself.
What do you think the energy was? Like, was it sadness?
It was. I know that I did do some checking in.
Okay.
I'll tell you. So it was fear, it was sadness, and it was. Hang on, I probably got it written down. To be fair, because I probably would have journaled on it. I could probably tell you. Stand by.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was bigger. I'm looking at my journal. It was bigger than that. You ready? Because when I do the check-in, I often use the Rallick method. I talk about my book, so I tend to name 3 things that I'm aware of. Fury.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever written fury down before. I know. Despair and unease, because it wasn't just about going. It wasn't just about going. And then so I check in with the feelings, and then I recognize the thoughts. And we're gonna need to put an explicit warning on this if I read this out.
Okay.
But it was the 2 thoughts that were coming in my head that was causing this was my back is fucked.
Yeah, I knew it was gonna be about your back.
And my body keeps breaking. Oh,
Yeah.
feel it coming up then just saying that. Yeah, it was those 2 things that was all tied in as well with maybe, I don't know. Yeah, there was just so much going on that I think there was the sadness and the nostalgia of leaving. And part of leaving Bournemouth, what it was being homeless at the moment and moving around. There's a lot of things that I really like about it. But when I'm back in Bournemouth, because it's my hometown, I have a feeling of home, just in the familiarity of the area and the people there as well. And it was the feeling of home that I felt sad about letting go. But yeah, I'd even forgotten that. Isn't it like amazing how short?
Yes.
This is why I journal, Steph. But how much it was actually about my back and my body, the compulsiveness around the puzzle.
Yeah. So to me, the puzzle is the fury.
It wasn't the last day.
Well, just that energy seems the same. Like the compulsive, like that to me is fury energy. If you had, okay, so let me ask you this. Where did screens go? But okay.
Well, I was watching Taskmaster at the same time as puzzling, but that's not screens and food.
We'll link
Sorry,
it that
folks.
way.
We'll get back to it, I promise.
Did you puzzle to journal? Like, did the journaling which came first?
Journaling was last. Journaling was for bed.
Okay. So you needed to, so the energy was getting out somehow, and then that led you to the journaling. Had you journaled first, do you think, was naming it helpful? When you were able to say, this is fury, this is about my back, this is about my body feeling broken, did that break the spell in any way?
It often does. And I'm trying to remember if on this occasion, because I then go through and I allow the next part of it is sort of accepting what I'm experiencing, which I would have done. I don't know about breaking the spell. I think there would have been something a bit grounding in it, but I don't know. The term breaking the spell is not quite resonating. So I'm not sure. I didn't journal
because
that part.
For me, that energy lives until I can name what it is. And that breaks the spell. Like, I'm like, oh, it's fury. That's what this is. I'm angry at my body. That's what this is. It's not that I really want to get this puzzle done. You know what I mean? Like that, and then this, for me, that spell will be broken. And I'm like, I still want to maybe do the puzzle. Maybe I will have some residual energy, but not the same.
No, because this was one that kept coming back because I kept naming all the feelings that were coming up around my back, and it would release me for a bit, but it would just come back again. It would have released me in the moment, but it would have been back again the next day.
Okay. So you were just having feelings.
I don't want feelings.
Oh, you're so good at them.
But yeah, so the puzzling, it was, yeah, I think I was so struck by the similarity between the two.
Yeah.
So that feeling, that sense of the checking out,
I see. I wasn't linking it up. So the puzzle was like, although do you feel there's a difference because a puzzle is directed action versus TV is like a passive action.
Well, I see the puzzle is the food and the TV was
Oh,
the
the
TV.
food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the iPad was on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What do we do with this information?
Tell people it will never end and it's just going to
Go get a
transpose onto
puzzle.
something else. Even if you
No,
get a
that's funny.
handle on the food, it just shows up somewhere else.
Okay. Do you ever feel that screens are productive for you while you eat?
That's a really interesting question. Do I feel they're productive? No, not productive, but they can just be part of an enjoyable experience.
Okay.
So when it's something I really want to watch and I'm eating something I'm really enjoying eating, then that can just be a nice experience. I'm not so sure that it provides a function as such.
How do you experience television without food now? As like, does it have its own merit in a way that it couldn't have before? Like, did you ever have that feeling of I can't watch TV without food? Where has that changed? I mean, well, I suppose it has, but how?
Again, it's about the reasons why I'm watching television. So before, when those two were inextricably linked and how watching TV could trigger the desire to eat, the watching TV, in order for it to trigger the desire to eat, there had to be an element of checking out in that.
Yeah. Can I ask a different question? I'm sorry to
Please.
interrupt.
Yeah.
So when you need to check out, then,
Mhm.
because I assume that the need to check out might still come up, how do you do it?
Yeah, I do. I probably do go and watch something. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm already thinking like I have had a full-on day today, and then we will finish recording here at 5, and then I've got another call at 7, and I've been going since 8:30. Between those hours of 5 and 7, I am going to lie on the sofa and watch an episode of Taskmaster. But I'm looking forward to just the act of that.
Yeah. Like it's intentional.
Yes, it's like that is happening, and it's going to feel really nice as well, and it's going to loosen my back up a bit, sort of the lying down and stretching myself out a bit. And it's something that feels like it does actually that is productive, that does serve a purpose. I remember once saying to my supervisor something about checking out or watching TV to check out, and she's like, "But what if that's absolutely fine?" And this was a while ago, and I remember going, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
That is absolutely fine. Because I had it in my head that I should learn how to never want to check out.
Yeah. Right.
And I should be so present and so accepting of my emotional experience that I don't need to check out. Which is kind of like you saying, oh, I should just be able to make myself calm. And like, that's just what I should be able to do. And it's like, this is how we're wired. Like, this is a self-management thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And even as you're saying that, because I'm picturing like, oh, 8:30 to 5 day where I've got a 7 p.m. call. That whole permission to check out between those hours was like, what? Like, because in my mind, I'm like, you gotta wait till 8. Like, and in my mind, it's like, you got to finish the day and then you check out. And I'm like, oh, right. You could totally just be like, nope, I'm going to do that on purpose during these periods. There is so much in giving yourself permission to do this stuff, because I could feel that angst in me lift when you were like, oh yeah, you could just take it. You could just take it on purpose and just lay down and give yourself permission to do that. That's exactly what we actually need. Oh yeah. Like that's a great thing. I'm getting caught up too in this idea of I'm not allowed, or I couldn't possibly, you know what I mean? And then that might come out. And then if that is what the body wants to do, that's where I would have been like, I'm going to do it anyway and then eat as I do it, because I'm not really giving myself permission to do the thing. You know what I mean? So I'll numb it all out.
And I had a thought earlier, well, actually, if you've got 2 hours and yes, you've been working all day, but you've been pretty much sitting down, wouldn't a walk be a better idea? There was that. And I had a moment of going, okay. There's part of me that's going, well, my body hasn't really moved. So is the quote unquote best thing for my body to go and have a walk and to get outside? Or am I listening to like what I think my mind wants? My mind wants to be able to just close down a bit, maybe even have a nap. And today it's okay. Today it's mind. Because this is where the tension is. The tension is in my mind. If I was really feeling the tension in my body more, it might be like, oh, I need to release this tension here. But the tension's right up in my head. Like I can feel it now as a bit of a tension headache. And it's tiredness as well. And some days I might be, actually, no, I'm going to try and nudge myself out the door for a walk. But I really do have to give myself permission to do both in order to feel like I'm actually making a choice about it.
Your energy today is different. And I could see where it'd be like, no, I'm going to lay down.
Yeah.
Whereas other days I would imagine you'd be like, I think I'll walk. I think I'll go. And now that I've said that, I've probably messed it all up.
No, not at all. No. Okay. No. My mind. Yeah, my mind is just going like, no, this is what's happening. We're looking forward to it, and it's absolutely not a problem. It's A-okay with me. I think this can overlap as well with the judgment that comes up about mindful eating. So there's this idea, well, if you are mindful and if you're staying present with food, then you won't go unconscious. This is a Janine Roth thing very much as well. She really emphasizes this idea of being present. And so if you're used to screen and food, I mean, the amount of times I had said to myself previously, oh, I just need to sit at the table and eat mindfully. And that just kind of at first being okay, it was kind of exciting. And it would be exciting to begin with because the first few times I'd do it, I was like, oh, I'm eating less. This is great. I'm going to carry on doing this. And then the minute the expectation is I need to eat less because I'm being more mindful, because I'm being more present, that just then screwed up the whole process. So some things that I've done before and have sometimes played around with my clients is just taking the first 5 bites and then turning the screen on. We're making this an all or nothing thing. I either have to sit here and eat this entire plate of food or whatever it is with no distractions, or I go completely unconscious. And there's a whole load of middle ground. And I'll sometimes ask the question as well, how could you bring a little bit more presence into your eating? Like, can we look at this with a little bit of nuance as well? Sometimes people will listen to a podcast when they're eating because their mind's got something that they can kind of use to regulate a bit, but maybe their eyes can take in their food a little bit more and just see what that's like. And treating it all as an experiment, because unless this is something that you are finding a benefit in, what's going to be the motivation to carry on compared to if you think it's something you should do?
Yeah.
So for me, sometimes I might notice like, oh, I don't know, can't remember the last time that I ate something when I wasn't watching something. And then I'll make a conscious choice. Okay, today for breakfast, I'm just going to sit down and eat my breakfast. And I'll do that as a conscious thing because I don't want to be using a screen because it's too uncomfortable not to. And I don't want to not use a screen because I think that's what I should do. But I like to be able to feel like I can be comfortable with both.
Right. Which requires that there's some comfort with feeling uncomfortable. Because I'm thinking about people who might use TV as a way to tune out from the fact that they're eating, right? Especially that end of the night, after work time where that's where the collective hunger shows up and you've been good all day or whatever it is. And then you know that feeling inside of you're like, I know I'm going to eat now. Especially in binge, like I know this is going to be binge. I know it's going to happen. And so I don't want to be here for it. Like, I don't want to feel the guilt about it. I just want to be able to do this because I know I'm going to do it anyway and tune out because that's the only way to bear it. And so using TV as a way to almost like, if I'm not paying attention, then I'm not worried about the permission. I'm not toggling with myself. So TV can serve a purpose in that as well. And so if there's still an immense amount of guilt about food, about eating in general, that TV is going to be that resource of, I'm not ready to be okay with this. This isn't something I'm willing to be conscious around.
And another way I see this showing up is when there's a lot of shoulds about what you should be doing. So if by not distracting yourself, not tuning out, if you like, you have to listen to a relentless voice in your head that's going, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Some people don't feel like they have permission to sit down for a couple of hours and just rest and enjoy television and restore energy or whatever it is, or even just the checking out. That judgment, I think, was a big one for me as well, because there's always stuff that I could be doing or could be getting on with, always things that I've procrastinated over.
Yeah.
And when I can just be much more accepting of that.
Yes.
It's not needed in the way to escape that, when I'm just allowed to not be productive. Like, I'm allowed to not go for a walk if I've been indoors all day. Previously, that could have looked more like, okay, well, I'm sitting all day, so I really should go out and get some exercise. And then if the time drew near and I didn't want to go to the gym or I didn't want to go and do the exercise, it wouldn't be like, oh, I can just then take a break and sit back and relax and enjoy myself. It would be like, no, I have to check out. Otherwise, I have to sit with the fact that I didn't do that thing that I said I was going to do.
Exactly. Totally. And I think that's why weekends can be hard too. Because weekends are this time that I think, for me, I still do this where I'm like, I can't do it. It's too busy during the week. I'll do it on the weekend. I put these things, and then the weekend arrives and I actually just need to rest from the week. But because we live in a world where it's kind of like we're just doing more of other kinds of things on the weekend. You know what I mean? We're not actually getting the rest. And so the idea of there are times on a Saturday afternoon where it's nice outside and there's a whole lot of shoulds about I should be out with my kids. I should be getting X, Y, and Z done. I should be doing laundry. And I find myself on the couch just doing a whole lot of nothing. And that can be such a no-no. Like that's lazy. That's not what this time, you're not using your time productively. Completely absent of the notion that this is a time for rest. That's what weekends are kind of for and needed for. The permission to say, like, I am giving myself that permission to just do nothing, even while there's other things I need to get done. I got to pick one, and I'm picking this one, and that can be okay. I think eating can become the way we're numbing out that void. Essentially what you're saying. There's such a guilt factor on the weekends for doing that. Trisha Hershey was on a podcast that I listened to about, the value of rest. And that podcast episode, or her work is really eye-opening if you're someone who struggles with giving yourself permission to rest and even the productivity of it and also the non-productive. Like it doesn't even have to be productive. It's just simply a human need to rest more often than we are. And when I listened to her speak about it and how much sense it made, and also the feeling I got in my body listening to her around, oh gosh, yes, like, thank you. That makes so much sense. Thank you for naming that. Has helped me just be like, when I'm tempted to feel guilty, I go back to that feeling and like, right, there is value in this in and of itself, not necessarily productive. It doesn't have to be about like, I need to rest so I can do more. It's just, I deserve to rest because this is what life is. Like these moments are part of life, and to restore is valuable. I think with people with eating disorders, for me, I'll speak for me, that I was already failing at so much of life that resting felt like even more indulgent. It was, no, you barely show up to anything as it is. Like you do everything else wrong. You don't do anything else you should be doing. That my shoulds felt valid. That it felt like, well, how many excuses can you make for yourself? And I think it would never help me. That mentality never helped me. It was more like, if I could give myself more permission to not should, I think I'd be doing more things I think I should. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
They'd become choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Refer back to Inner Rebel episode.
I do need a rest, to be honest. I would love to take the rest of the day off and rest.
Can you?
No, I cannot. And the reason I need to rest is because I have been away, which is so ironic, but I've been like with family. I was off really for 5 days. But it's not off, it's family off, and I'm tired, and I wasn't, I was having some drinks and eating more food than usual. And I just feel like I need a day. I would love to just watch TV and chill, but I can't. And that is something I have to sit with.
When is your next moment that you can really take time for yourself to just restore in some way? It might not be a whole day, but when do you next have an opening?
9 o'clock tonight. I can for a bit before I fall asleep, which I think I'll do early. And after that, perhaps on the weekend, I've got some things planned for the weekend, but I have nothing on Sunday. I think Sunday is free. But it's still the kids are around. It's different.
Yeah. You could take an hour after this, no?
If
you took between 4 and 5?
If we ended now, yeah. Whoa. I could report back on what it's like to intentionally go lay on the couch, which I wouldn't have done unless you said it.
Now it sounds like you want to. You could have an hour.
I really do.
Doing
I needed that permission.
Yeah. So just for context, Steph and I were going to record another episode after this. It's nearly 4 o'clock. So if we ended after this episode, Steph
we would both have an extra hour.
I get an extra hour. You get an extra hour.
I would have 2. I don't have anyone till 1. I'm going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. And I am going to come back and write about it in the comments on YouTube.
Yeah. So go to YouTube to see how Steph found
how it ended.
Post-podcast recording rest.
You too.
Yeah.
Wow, look at us just like real-time
self-care.
Real-time self-care. Like you can't, we don't even have to tell a story about it. It just happened right in front of your eyes.
Okay. Well, we're going to go off and...
All right, well then, bye everybody.
Bye.